Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to Billing Management System Tutorials. Today is our lecture number 7 and today I am going to demonstrate the sales invoice once again, and the thing that we have left, let me complete it also. In the previous lecture I have already completed the sales invoice, but there is something that should be also incorporated with the sales invoice. That is the sales invoice table. Okay, so I have created that sales invoice table in the second last lecture you have seen, if you have seen. So I have to incorporate that sales invoice table once again inside this software. So what's the reason behind that? The reason behind that is when you are going to return something, so you need the sales invoice number, okay, or the bill number for that particular customer. So the ledger only will not only help you at this point. So let me show you how you can do this and solve this problem. Alright, so that's our software. Here we have done in this we have done particular work in this window. I have also created two windows, that is sales return and the payments window. Okay, so I will demonstrate these two windows also later on, but let me first show you the sales invoice. What you can do here, you can come inside your billing window, that is your sales invoice window, and look, in the previous lectures I have done that code. In this code what you are doing, you are inserting the shop ID, you are inserting the customer ID, you are inserting the details, you are inserting the amount, you are inserting the type, you are inserting the user ID, all the things you are inserting inside this sales invoice. So if you can use this, what will happen, let me show you. Uncomment it and then put the bracket at the end at this point. Okay, so bracket is now added, and this bracket is for the transaction. Simple. Okay, so what will now happen, the data, the amount, the details will first go and store inside the sales invoice. Okay, and then it will store the same details inside the ledgers. Now sorry for that, but because to make a flow and because I am recording and I am creating the live things, so there are certain things that I can also do mistakes. Okay, so let me clear it again, because it is very necessary to update you again and again. User ID you are saving inside your sales invoice table. Let me show you the sales invoice table also. That's my sales invoice table. If you see here, sales invoice columns, look, you are taking the user ID, you are taking the type, you are taking the amount, okay, you are taking the details. So do we have to enter user ID here, or do we have to apply the type here? Because type you are taking here, so you don't need to apply type. Remove this from the customer ledger. You also have to remove from the vendor ledger, and then that's my date. So date is good inside the ledger, that's fine. Balance, debit, credit is fine, and the description. So the description you have to do, you have to write the description manually, because here the details of the thing will appear, and with respect to accounts you have to modify the description. Okay, so let us save this and go to the stored procedure and also open the vendor ledger table so that you can remove the certain things. So design, and what you have to remove, you have to remove the type, and the user ID is there. Okay, so you can remove the user ID because you are taking the user ID in the sales invoice. You can remove the user ID. Okay, I am removing the user ID also. Make it simple. In the customer ledger, remove the user ID. Okay, save it, and in the vendor ledger, remove the user ID. All the things are now fine. Now let's go to the procedures. Insert customer ledger update. Insert customer ledger. Here is the procedure. So I have to open it. Right. So because I have removed the user ID, the type. Okay. So I am removing here also the user ID and the type. I don't need. Okay, that's fine. So remove the comma and then execute. Commands completed successfully, and let's go to the vendor ledger, and here you have to remove the type and the user ID also. Remove it and then execute it. Okay, remove this comma and then execute it. Okay, and now you have the get ledger. Where is that get ledger? Let me refresh the procedures and programmability, stored procedures, and you have to rename first the procedure name, and you also have to change the links. Okay, so here first of all rename this get okay, remove this. In fact, right click, modify, and now because you are saving inside the sales invoice, you put this procedure, but in fact this, create a new query and paste it, and right here create, and you can specify here get sales invoice. Okay, and then you can use the delete operation on this, but it is not, I do not recommend to delete and to update, because once the invoice is saved, it is saved. You cannot delete that or you cannot update that. So what you need here, you need the sales invoice ID. Remove this code, select all from customers C, inner join shop S on C dot ID is equals to S dot customer ID, sorry, S dot ID is equals to C dot belongs to inner join sales invoice SI on SI dot what you need here. Okay, one thing you need here is the customer ID is equals to SI dot customer ID. Okay, and inner join you need you need the shops, so you have the shops also. So one more thing that you can create here is the and condition, and then S dot shop ID is equals to SI dot shop ID. Okay, so two conditions are applied in parallel, and then what you can do, you can specify the column names, and the column names should be, let us come here and change this. You need the customer ID, customer name, shop ID, shop name, and then you need the sales invoice ID here. Okay, so sales invoice ID, sales ID GV, sorry, yes, sales ID GV, no problem, read only, visible, false, and then click here. You have to write sales ID GV. Okay, that's my sales ID GV, close, put it at the top. Okay, sales ID, customer name, balance, and then you need user GV. Okay, who saved this sales, so user or posted by. Okay, so I'm doing the same task again, posted by, and you need the other things, that is the user ID GV. So user ID GV, and then add what else you need. Okay, of course you are saving the details. Okay, the details of the thing. So because now every sale invoice should be displayed properly, so you have to display the details. You can display the details also. So details GV, and right here details, and then add, and then make it visible, false, user ID GV, click OK. So what is this? Customer, and then the details should come before the total balance, and then that's okay. Okay, so customer, shop, and the details and the balance or the amount. Okay, now it should not be the balance, it should be the amount, and the type also should display here. So type GV and type GV, the heading should be only type, it is read only, add and close, and then OK. Okay, so all things are now set. Here you have to specify the customer ID as ID, customer ID, then specify the customer name as customer, then S dot shop ID as shop ID, and then s dot name as shop, and then si dot details as details, then si dot amount as amount, then si dot, you have to specify where is the date. Don't we have the date column? Okay, so we have to do that also. And one more thing that I have to specify is the inner join users u on u dot id is equals to si dot user id. Okay, so you can specify si dot user id as user id, and u dot name as user. Okay, right, so you have to specify the user, and then user id is there, and then what you need else, let us see from here, type. Okay, so the type should be there. So case when what you need, si dot type is equals to 1, then credit, else cash, and then end as type. Okay, so that's all the things. Get sales invoice, simple procedure. And now execute, copy it, and then come here and go to the billing window, go at the top. Okay, go at the top, and here you have to put this first, customer id gv customer, customer id customer, shop id shop, then details, then amount, then user id. So here should be details gv, and then the amount is there, and then user id user. So here you have to specify user id gv, and you have to specify the user, and then you have to specify the type. So paste it, and here you have to specify type. Okay, so now all things are set. When you click the save button, what will happen? All the details will be inserted inside the sales invoice table, and then inside the ledger, what you are going to save? The first thing is the balance. So this is the balance code. Okay, loading the previous balance. Okay, and now you have calculated the balance. Then inside the ledger, let us go to the now procedures. So customer ledger, refresh this column. Now you have only left with this. So customer ID description, debit credit balance, date is there, yes. The type and the user ID should be omitted from here. Okay, so these two things I have to skip, and I have to skip from this also. Okay, so same is the case for the vendor ledger and for the customer ledger. I hope it is clear to everyone. Now let's go to the truncate part and delete this. We will see, I'll use this procedure in the later videos to create the reports, to load all the balances of all the customers. I will use this, no problem. So let us go to the truncate part. Where is that? Okay, yes. So customer ledger is truncated, the vendor ledger is truncated, both tables are now truncated. To make your software quality assured, you have to do these iterations again and again. This is the third iteration of the sales invoice. Okay, but finally you will get the same good thing. Okay, so view, you don't have anything right now. Okay, so click add, sales invoice, customer is Bilal, order name let's say clothes and goods, and the date is this and the amount is 1000. Okay, type is cash and then click save. It is saying that there is a problem. Okay, where is the problem? I have skipped something maybe. So let us see where should it get me the problem. So make a breakpoint here and then click save again, come inside and see what's the problem, where is the exception coming. The procedure is insert sales invoice, and then the loop will execute as many number of times, as many number of parameters I have passed, that are 6. So this loop is executed 6 times and the result is 0. Look, the data is not inserted. Look, the commands does not complete it successfully. Why? So let us verify the insert sales invoice procedure. Insert sales invoice. Alright, so that's my insert sales invoice procedure. So here I am using this window to send the shop ID, then customer ID, then details, then amount, then type, then user ID. So all things are now are good, are fine. Okay, so what's the problem then? Let us see. Go to the exception and see, it is saying that no mapping exists. Okay, let's see the inner details. Inner exception is null, so there is nothing. Okay, so what's the problem? Let us go to the code here at this point. Insert sales invoice transaction. Let us clear and clean build the solution and then check it once again. Start and let us check, do we have the records inside the sales invoice already? Let us see. Edit. So I don't have the records inside the sales invoice. That table is blank, and then it is giving me an errors. Okay, it is saying to please rebuild every module. That's what I was doing. Rebuild, right click, rebuild, right click, rebuild, so the references can be updated. Rebuild and then finally rebuild. Okay, so all things are now set. Now let's start. It's still saying the problem. Okay, just rebuild these things. Where's that? Right click, rebuild, rebuild succeed, right click, rebuild, and then rebuild succeeded, and then right click, rebuild, rebuild succeeded, and then right click, rebuild, rebuild succeeded, and then build this BMS is also succeeded. Okay, now start. So that's what the reference problem. And now let us go again and click add ABC garments. This is the detail and the amount is 1000, and then click save. Okay, again the same error. Alright, so the problem is this: I haven't specified the .text property. That's why it is saying that no mapping exists. So that's what the problem. Now let us check again. There are so many little things that we can do. Login and then sales invoice, and then click add, select your customer, and then order details, clothes and garments, whatever you can write the order details, and then 1000 cash, and then save. Look, sales invoice saved successfully and the record is now loaded, and you are only looking or seeing at the sales invoice. Okay, I hope it is clear to everyone. So now you can have now a choice that you can click here and then the details will be loaded here, and then you can edit that and you can delete that particular sales invoice. So but one thing that you have to do is you have to enter the sales invoice inside the ledger also. Okay, that you have to insert the sales invoice inside the ledger so that you can pick up the record and you can delete that particular record inside the from the ledger. Okay, so what you can do, you can come here and go to your ledgers, customer ledger and design, and instead of the previous columns that you have seen, you have to add here the sales invoice ID here at this point. Okay, so CL underscore sales invoice ID, that is big integer. Okay, let me truncate first. Where's that? Where's the truncate? Yes, I have again truncated the table so that I can be able to add the not null column. So sales invoice, is basically the big integer, so that's my big integer. Okay, save it, and then we have to make the relationship between the sales invoice and the other table. So how can you specify the relationship? For that you have to go to the designer. I'm doing the graphical manner to add the relationship. So that's my relationship name. So the name of my relation should be let's say with the help of sales invoice. So sales invoice and then table, and then come here and then select the sales invoice as a primary key column. Okay, sales invoice ID, and then here you can specify the sales invoice ID. So whenever you remove the sales invoice ID, the data from the debit credit balance table, the customer ledger or the vendor ledger will also be deleted. Okay, so that's what the case. Or you can use the no action also, that you cannot delete the sales invoice because its ledger is already there. I hope it is clear to everyone. Okay, so it's up to you, no action you have to apply, or you have to apply the cascade one. So save it and then come in and then here. Okay, and one more thing that you have to specify, there is the vendor ledger, and you have to do the same. So copy this column and open the vendor ledger. Where is that vendor ledger? Here we have the vendor ledger, and then edit and add the same column inside the vendor ledger. Sorry, not edit, design, and then click add. Okay, so that's my vendor ledger, and then click save, and then you have to go to the stored procedures. Okay, and you have to mention that inside the stored procedures. So insert vendor ledger, you have to rename, modify it, and you have to modify the insert customer ledger also. Alright, so you have to mention here inside the vendor ledger, that is the sales invoice ID. Okay, and here you have to specify the data type, and here you have to call the sales invoice ID. So at the rate, okay, one thing that I have skipped, sales invoice ID. Okay, sales invoice ID. Now execute it. Commands completed successfully. Now let's open the customer ledger and insert customer ledger, and you have to change it. You have to change it here, and you can have to mention here the same thing, that is the sales invoice ID, and big integer, and you have to enter at the end also at the rate sales invoice ID, and then execute it. Now how can you pick up the sales invoice? So you have to pick up the last sales invoice. Do we have the last sales invoice? No, we don't have the last sales invoice. We have the last balance, we have the last customer ID, we have the last thing, but we don't have the last sale invoice. Okay, so you have to pick up the last sale invoice. So for that purpose, I'm creating a new procedure. Create procedure st underscore get last sales invoice. Okay, and then as select top one from sales invoice SI, and you can select SI dot ID as ID, and then what you can do, order by SI dot ID descending. Okay, so get last sales invoice. Now what you can do, you can come here, and after inserting the inside the sales invoice, what you can do, you are getting up the last balances, that's fine, but you have to pick up the last sales invoice ID so that you can insert inside the inside this insert, and then vendor also. So you have to write here integer 64, and then sales ID is equals to crude dot load last, sorry, get last ID, and what it is asking you, the procedure. So the procedure name is this one, copy it and then paste it. It will return an object. Look, it is returning an object, so you have to convert it into integer 64. Convert dot to integer 64. I must mention here that you have to see the previous lectures and the previous softwares in order to create this software, otherwise you can't create this software. These are all my built-in modules that I have created inside the previous lectures. So this is how you can pick up your last sales ID, and when you pick up your last sales ID, you have to insert it inside the customer ledger and inside the vendor ledger. So remove this, and you have to write here at the rate, come here and copy this sales invoice ID, that's my customer insert ledger. So you have to paste it and you have to write here sales ID, last sales ID basically, and then you have to go to your vendor ledger, that is this one, and here you have to do the same in the code. So copy this sales invoice ID at this point and paste it here, that's my ht3, my hash table, and sales invoice, let me check the spelling, copy it from the, that's my vendor ledger, and paste it here. Okay, so now all things are set, and then insert vendor ledger, and then that's it. Remove this code. Now you can do the update part also, because the data is loading, and you can run this and then check what is the result. Now you are going to insert the sales ID inside the vendor ledgers and the customer ledger. So I don't have any record. Yes, I have the record by default. So what I can do, I can remove this first. So that's my sales invoice table. So delete from sales invoice DBCC. This is if you have a foreign key table, then you have to remove or truncate the table like this, DBCC check ident, and then round brackets, and then give your sale invoice table name, and then reseed, and then comma 0, reseed it to 0. Okay, check ident DBCC. Now that's fine. Execute. Commands completed successfully. Sales invoice is truncated, and now we'll have to truncate other tables also. So come here at this point, and you can go to the truncate one. Where's that truncate part? Okay, so these are my truncate procedures. Execute. Now my tables are blank. Okay, when you view, nothing is there. Okay, now what you can do, you can go to the shop, you can select your customer, you can give your order details, clothes and garments, and then you have to specify the amount, that is 1000, that is cash, and then save. It is saved and it is displayed here. Okay, now let's go to the database and see the particular structure, what is going on inside the customer ledger and inside the sales invoice. If the data is inside the sales invoice is perfectly entered, then the sales invoice ID should be displayed here inside the customer ledger. So look, the sales invoice ID is there. Okay, now you can use this sales invoice ID for future references. That is why I have used and I have created this sales invoice table. I hope it is clear to everyone. Now what you have to do, you have to do the next steps. The next steps are when you click here, the data should be loaded inside this inside this form, and then you can if you wish to give the add functionality, update functionality, you can provide, and you can, if you wish to delete, then you can be able to delete also. So that's all for today. If you do not understand anything, please do write me. Now finally the sales invoice work is now finished. If you wish to add the update and the delete work here, you can delete it, and make sure to make the customer ledger and the vendor ledger relationship to cascade, so that when you delete the sales invoice, the data from the vendor ledger and the customer ledger should also be deleted. I hope it is clear to everyone. And now in the next class, I will show you how to do the returns and how to do the payments in parts or in installments, and how to, and then we'll see the reports portion. So thank you so much. Take care. Allah Hafiz.